Hi everybody, welcome to the show. I've had a few people get in touch asking, what do we do about what's happening in this day and age, in these interesting times we live in? They feel there's big disasters about to happen, there's dangerous times ahead. And I had recently been rereading from Bennett, Gurdjieff, A Very Great Enigma, fantastic set of lectures. So I thought I just wanted to answer this question that people are asking me about through his words. So this is from, as I say, the little booklet. It's 4 or 5 lectures about Gurdjieff, and Bennett starts in this book discussing who Gurdjieff is, what his aim was, and I think he does it so succinctly. But in the last lecture is these kind of questions that people have been asking me, and he says it so much better than I ever could. So that's why I'm going to read from J.G. Bennett's collection of lectures, Gurdjieff, A Great Enigma. And Bennett was asked this question: is there a chance of saving the world from disaster? Bennett replies, the old world is past saving. During this present century, the first great disaster has already occurred. This was due to the failure of mankind to recognize the enormous responsibility we incurred through our great technical discoveries, especially the release of energy through steam, internal combustion engines, and electrical generators. This release of energy threw the world out of balance. Only conscious people could have rectified it. According to Gurdjieff, there was a group in Tibet who could have saved the world, but their leader was killed by a stray bullet when the British invaded Tibet in 1902, and the rest of the group died soon after. This group knew the secret of generating the spiritual energies needed to neutralize the destructive forces released by our technical discoveries. Gurdjieff had learned a part of this secret and passed it on to us. It is the answer to his question, what is the sense and significance of human life on this earth? Because of the disaster in 1902, the world collapsed. 2 world wars and the loss of 40 million lives were the visible consequences. The breakdown of human societies and the threat of a Third World War were before us in 1950, but strange things happened that averted the final tragedy. So that I'm going to end the quote there. And this is where he's discussing, where Gurdjieff was talking about this set of Tibetan monks, sacred men, conscious people. He discusses it. I'm pretty sure it's in Beelzebub's Tales. And it's a sad story that this conscious man was shot by and killed by a stray bullet, and because of that, that group of Tibetans who were his initiates, his disciples, could not carry on because they needed their leader obviously to help them through what was happening and to help them learn the way of becoming a conscious person. And that's better to read in the actual books, because obviously Gurdjieff goes into far deeper detail of explaining how these energies then dissipated. But because of this loss of awakened people, the rest of humanity on the world began to fall, and it all led to, because of the energies not being harmonized, the horrifics of World War I, World War II, and the continuing wars of throughout the last century, the 1900s, and on up to today. But then Bennett goes on to say, quote, now we must think of saving the new world. We continue to make technical discoveries and release more and more energy. If we succeed in harnessing the energy of atomic fusion, a really frightful situation will arise. The work started in Tibet 100 years ago will have to be resumed on a far greater scale. I'm going to end the quote there, coming back to the continuation of the technical discoveries. Oh, I'm tripping over my words there. We know that obviously there was the steam engine, then it turned into internal combustion engines, and also the electrical generators he talks about. This spread humanity forward in a technical way very fast, and with all that technical revolution, the spiritual side of humanity got left behind. And science and religion should really work together and grow together. But science went flying ahead, saying, look what we can do, look what we can do for humanity, look how we're all going to advance and become superior human beings. But with that also came technology that obviously hurt people, with the bombs and the atomic bomb. I believe the atomic bomb has devastating effects, and sadly there were countries that continued on for many decades after its discovery. We have many countries still testing atomic bombs in outer space, testing atomic bombs in the sea. Through the last 100 years, or whenever it was discovered, maybe it's 80 years, I can't remember when the atomic bomb was discovered, but these would have a fracturing effect on the energies of the Earth. Splitting the atom is a very dangerous thing to have done, and they used it when they did finally split the atom, rather than using it in some kind of way of perhaps being for the better of humanity. They've used it for destruction. It's always how to kill others first, which is, they use it as the excuse of to be able to defend ourselves. But it has a ripple effect into nature and into our planet, that atomic detonations, which Bennett is warning us about here, calling it, a frightful situation. It's more than a frightful situation now. It's a well, it is still a frightful situation. We still could be on the brink of a nuclear war. But Bennett goes on to say how we can save the world. So, this is a quote. To save the world, 3 different kinds of action are required. 1 is visible, and 2 are invisible. The visible work is to prepare the new social order. We shall need work communities, or as Gurdjieff called them, fourth-way schools. These will be devoted to training people to survive and perfect themselves under the severe conditions of the next 100 years. These schools will have the practical task of creating self-supporting communities able to work together and share resources, and also to help their environment. This is much harder than it looks. Modern man is a taker and not a giver. Whoever has power uses it to take and hold, whereas the only right use of power is to give and share with others. It is possible to go far enough in the elimination of egoistic grasping after one's own benefit to be able to live and work in a community, but this requires teaching and training. That is what fourth-way schools are for, but only on the exoteric or outer plane. End quote. And this is something many of us obviously believe in. We want the right type of communities where people look upon each other and realise that's a human being in front of me. We must live together, we must work together. It's coming back to the golden rule of do unto others what you would have done to yourself. And as Gurdjieff says, if we look at each person and realise that one day that person will die, and that I and you and all of us will die, we begin to treat each other in a much more humane and better way. But at the moment, or in the last many decades, even Bennett could see this back in the time that he was giving this lecture, humanity was dividing up into a everything for oneself kind of attitude and not caring about others. There was still the keeping up with the Joneses attitude, but not the let's share things with the Joneses and make a community and all live happily. Obviously there are communities out there that do live like that, but there's also a lot going on that's dividing the communities and keeping people separate. And as he says, it is much harder than it looks to try and start a community. I've been involved in a few over the years, and egos sometimes take over. It's having the right type of people to do this. And we have to remember that, as he says here, modern man is a taker and not a giver. He's also talking about the new social order. That could go either way. A social order, we don't want new world order when they dominate and oppress. We want a new social order where we all care for each other and work together and learn together and be humans together. Another question put to Bennett was, can you tell us if Gurdjieff expected a world catastrophe? Did he prepare for what was going to happen? Did he foresee a great fight between the powers of good and evil? And Bennett replies, I do not think he expected the wholesale destruction of a great part of the human race. The end of the old world and the start of the new was the subject of the very last talk I had with him, just a week, almost to the hour before he died. I was with him for 2 hours that Saturday morning, the 22nd of October, 1949, and he was speaking about the conflict between the old world and the new. He referred to this very confrontation you have in mind, and some remarkable things about the, at that time, apparently imminent open conflict between the East and the West, as he put it, that is, between USA and the USSR. He said, this looks unavoidable, but it will not happen. This is not the real conflict which is between the old world and the new. It is not between one form of materialism and another form of materialism. This real conflict between the old and the new, he said, is a serious one. The outcome is not guaranteed. It is not possible for the world to be made chick. He clearly identified himself with the new world when he said, either I will make the old world chick, or it will make me chick. Now another great war will not happen. When Beelzebub is published, a new force will come into the world. End quote. And he's, the word chick here, he was making this sound, kind of like a tick kind of thing. But he's saying that a new force will come into the world when Beelzebub is published, and that's obviously referring to Beelzebub's tales to his grandson. And this is something that can be used if people would just read it properly. He does say read it 3 times, where he discusses how humanity came about, how the world has become as it is, and how a human being can transform themselves. It's like an alchemical medicine inside that book. He talks about also how we need to have the right attitude to create a new social order that will be beneficial for humanity. And Bennett goes on to say the new world will be dominated by active, mobile and much more intelligent forms of social life. This is why we have to look to small groups and communities, and above all to the emergence of group consciousness, which corresponds to the state of the warm-blooded animals. And he was, end quote, he was previously talking about the dinosaurs and mammalians and things like that. Continuing the quote, we need a warm-blooded society, not the present cold-blooded society. Because of the great advantage warm blood has over cold in times of stress, I believe that the new world will survive. There will be a time of great difficulties, and it is not desirable that the collapse of the old world should come suddenly. It would probably not be possible to survive a sudden collapse of order throughout the world. Little by little the old world will die out. New social forms, new modes of existence will take its place. For this we must prepare ourselves today. If we have a feeling towards that, if something in us responds to that, then our first duty is to prepare. End quote. And Bennett goes on talking about this new social order needs to have new perceptions coming with it. And someone asks, you speak about the possibility of acquiring new perceptions. Where does this power come from? How could I know whether I have it or not? And question, which I think is a really good question and something many of us think about all the time. So Bennett replies, All people have it. That is how man is made. We are endowed with this possibility just as much as we are with the possibility of touching and smelling and seeing. Indeed, more so, because one can be born blind, but one is not born without this possibility. It is inherent in the very essence of human nature, but that does not mean that everyone has an equal chance of achieving it. Not at all. This may vary greatly between one person and another. How far people can go also varies enormously. Those who are able to go all the way are the rarest of the rare. That is how it is arranged. But everyone has the potential to realize or neglect. It is a matter of our own choice. That is said in the new law of Moses. Behold, I set before you this day life and death, blessing and cursing. Choose therefore life, that thou and thy seed may live. I am personally concerned. My task is to find people who have a high potential and help them to realize it. That does not mean that there is not much to be done for everyone, but if people who have a high potential be prepared to accept conscious labor and intentional suffering, they can then become the means of help to many others beside themselves. This is really the principle. If you are able to receive much, you are also able to give much." End quote. And I think this is a very inspiring talk here. He's telling us we can do this. Those that become fully conscious, he's saying, are the rarest of the rare. But we all have that potential. We can all aim towards that. And hopefully we can awaken and help others. And he goes on to say later, the deeper mesoteric work is concerned with energies. Psychic and spiritual energies must be released, concentrated, stored up and put to work in the right way. This requires very special knowledge and readiness to work and sacrifice. There are schools in the world that are doing this today, but they are not in the West. We need to take up this work ourselves. I'm just going to end the quote there because I find, and I've met many people over the years, not willing to put in the work, not willing to take up the sacrifice. But it's understandable. They want to live their lives. They're caught up in modern day, lifestyles. But to do this kind of work, we have to change our way of living. And he goes on to say, if people are willing to undertake such work, they must first be tested to see if they have the required qualities. They must be able to put aside personal ambition and set themselves to serve the future without expectation of reward. Gurdjieff once said that 200 conscious people could stop war. If this number will be available by 1990, the disaster that threatens mankind will be averted. I'm going to end the quote there. Were there 200 awakened people by 1990? 200 conscious people that could stop war? I'm not sure if that's happened. So we still have that opportunity. We need to make conscious people, and maybe you are one of those conscious people that can help him from above with us down below. Thank you for listening, and until next time, peace and out.